All my life, I've ghosted toxic exes, friends, and business partnerships. It was my way of protecting me from a terrible fact that often I would not claim. I was clear in the relationship. At school, teachers would praise me for how clear I was at communication, but at home, my parents' arguments or vision of situations would always surpass mine and land me in a perpetual wrongdom. For a long time, I genuinely thought it was because I was not clear and needed to repeat myself or become more concise. Yet the truth is, my truth did not matter. In this world, everyone feels they are psychologists, and to my friends, my ghosting tendencies were divisively received. To Yali and Josie, I was being a coward. I should just confront the a-holes of my life for their BS and save myself the following stomachache that occurred every time I never spoke my truth. To Nina, I had a point. You just can't talk to people, so stop. At first, I thought Yali and Josie were right. Maybe I was a coward, especially because my stomach pains always stirred when I wanted to speak and rage on someone that had completely disrespected and misinterpreted me. Yet my last visit with my dad solidified that my ghosting was appropriate. And it was not the fear of speaking my truth to someone as much as knowing I have always loved people that could care less if I am loved, especially by myself. As we sat in a park bench, I had a list of so many wrongs my father did, and he encouraged me to say the list. As a con man, now reformed lawyer, the man loved arguments, and even as a child, to confront him on his behavior was like playing a game of Clue, and I needed to have the literal study and candlestick to prove Colonel Mustard did it. In perspective, it was horribly cruel and pressuring on a child to make them prove your poor behavior was actually poor and affecting them, especially because my dad was always aware of his ills. He just really did not want to be confronted on them. He would be the first one to say he was an addict and assume that he didn't do what addicts do, like verbally abuse children or steal or lie. Thus, as he fidgeted, refusing to look me in the eyes, I rambled on how he hurt me, only to be interrupted by him bursting into laughter after a park gardener accidentally hosed himself in the face and fell. I realized in that moment my father had purposefully tuned out and was letting me rant on like the series of movie trailers you have to watch until the film you actually paid for begins. He treated my spoken pain like a due we had to pay to get back to our usual superficial bond. The hose gardener shot up and looked around as if 100 billion eyes had watched him water himself more than the plants, but it was just two people, or rather two eyes, my dad's. Suddenly, everything I had said and planned to say left my brain, which may have been his strategy. Life became about chuckling at the gardener, and with fascinating verbal dexterity, we had changed topics to things that interested my dad, like the final season of Succession, Salsa's greatest musicians, and how he had gotten a new $1,000, $10,000 dog. Sorry. I gave in to the topic change, and was not until later I realized he never asked me for forgiveness. He had mentioned Kendall Roy more than I'm sorry, and an old familiar emptiness sank in. I was about to let back into my life someone that did not fulfill it or even see it as something to be fulfilled. I ghost men because the real ghost is me. I have never dated, fallen in love with, or even been hired by a man that values and respects me as a human being. And on that day, I realized I was also not fathered by one. Yet ghosting was not the real problem. It was consistently going after people and making one sided relationships with them that disappointed me and eventually led me to realize I had to walk away from them with no notice. And they will still only think about themselves and how a gardener humorously hosed them himself. I think, ghosting, let's discuss. Ghosting is such a divisive topic, particularly amongst women, because like you heard with Josie and Yali, their idea is, confront it. It's a matter of bravery, it's a matter of honesty. I think it's a matter of coping and healing. One thing that I realized in perspective of my relationship with my dad and so many of my toxic exes, which I guess my dad, I mean, I wrote an episode, I haven't come out with it, but I sometimes I feel like my dad was, and I know that sounds so sick and twisted, but I really feel he was like the first
guy I ever dated, because he really did treat me like this ex-girlfriend that he couldn't get rid of. Like, he did not treat me as a child, like a child. He aged me, he belittled me, he planned ways to humiliate me and turn people against me, like my siblings. He was a very disgusting character. And when he laughed at the gardener, it was so brilliant of him as a strategist and a debater, because again, he's a lawyer, he has mental level genius. It stunned me, because one thing that my dad would do, it's such a, verbal trick. He would either super interrupt me, and to the point where I was getting interrupted so much I would forget my thoughts, or he would just let me ramble and ramble. And the problem is, he trained me to always look after his feelings more than mine. Even expressing myself, I had to watch him to see how he changed, his mood changed. And I when he laughed, this was we hadn't seen each other like in nearly a decade, and he forgot my age. He was horrible. He just really screwed the pooch. And I had planned to tell him every bad thing he had done to me, because I just really thought that if I told him the harm, he would be repentant, and it would be like his reactions and his responses would be proof that he actually loved me, that he actually cared about me, that he regretted all his bad behaviors, and he was just the same horrible person. And he was there shaking his head, and then he started dying laughing because the gardener hosed himself. And he was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm gonna continue." And I just died inside, because, first of all, it's like my entire list just left my body. And I was so scared, because this is how you know you're not safe with a person. I was genuinely trying to figure out how I was going to tell my dad. He absolutely ruined my life. I knew he did it on purpose, because I could tell him all the schemes he committed. And I was willing to forgive him, because he is my father, if he actually said sorry. And he not only did not say sorry, he laughed. He was watching someone else instead of me. He was listening to someone else instead of me. And he just wanted to get over it. And I felt, God, oh my God, I might cry thinking about it, because sometimes the thing about Daddy Recovery is I'm writing all my memories, and I'm speaking all my truths, and I'm watching them transform into something at times so much richer and wiser, and at times so much more tragic. Because when it happened, one of the things of being abused by your parent is that they normalize bad behavior, because they're your first like human interaction. And you don't laugh at somebody crying, you don't distract and watch gardeners while someone is saying you ruined their life. And I was so scared, because my father always lived in denial. He would just deny everything, act like it didn't happen, and he would act so certain that even if you knew he was lying, what is if somebody is so deep and certain about their lies, even if you have the truth, like somehow they'll make you feel insecure about it. And not in terms of doubting the truth, but doubting it's even worth saying and hearing. And I think that was why what Josie and Yali didn't understand. My father was dead inside. He just did things according to what he wanted, and like build relationships according to the lies that would make him get what he wanted from others, from people, his grandchildren, my other siblings, whatever friend. If somebody traveled to Japan, he would say he traveled to Japan, and paint it in a way where you thought he went, and he never went to Japan. Like, he wanted to be loved, even if he couldn't feel the emotion anymore. And when I think he felt I didn't love him. And what I realized is I didn't. I couldn't love somebody that was always trying to humiliate me and make me less than, and hated me in some ways, or at least wanted me to hate myself because I don't think my dad feels. I think he hated me because had to convince himself I was a villain. So he would keep on avoiding child support and, the master's program, kind of scheming. So I would somehow have to pay for it, even though he said, like, he loved cruelty when it came to me. And that that wasn't even the end of the trip. It was just like a 3-day reunion, and it just sunk and sunk and sunk. And what I found is I was falling back into this behavior of silence and just smiling and kind of asking my dad, "What do you love about me, Dad? You think I'm great?" And I literally asked that. I asked him, "What do you love about me?" And he said, "You're my daughter." And I said, "But what are the qualities?" And he said, "You're just my kid." And this is my abuser. And he's like, "Why? What do you love about me?" And I said, "That you're cultured, that you know how to turn a room to love you, even if you don't care about anybody in that room, that you love TV and entertainment, the same shows he likes, I liked." And that was probably one of the final nails in the coffin, because that was like, I think, on the third day he did that. And I thought, you really just came here to act like you did everything you could to get me back. Because one of the reasons I reached out to him is my sister reached out saying he was sick and that he talks about me all the time. But upon landing, he called me an alcoholic because I had an Aperol Spritz. He made me pay for one of his dinners. He went back to his old behavior of kind of like watching me and making fun of me and seeing how he could make me pay for stuff so he could, or making sure he didn't pay for too many things for me, like always watching his money. And he was just, I can't even describe it as just, he was so materialistic. There was no spiritual connection to me or desire for it. And I even told him at one point, "You feel so numb to me." And he was like, "Well, my childhood." And I ghosted him. Well, this time I didn't ghost him. I called him and he said, "What about my feelings?" And I said, "Nope, don't care anymore. I have to put me first." And then my mom called him and he said, "Yeah, I didn't try." And he said, "But I hope she has a good life." He said that. And I heard it because my mom had him secretly on loudspeaker. And I realized, and it's something that I watched in Sister Wives. Janelle was talking about Cody, and I love Sister Wives. And it's about this narcissistic man in Utah that marries women and then abandons them and acts like he was abandoned. And I think she said something to what Cody does is that he pushes you away until you exit and then acts like the victim because you leave. And that was what my father was doing. He was using my name and my absence from his life to kind of make my siblings pity him. "Oh, poor daddy, he lost a daughter, that biatch, and her mom. Oh my God, could she not see all that you did?" They had no clue of his verbal abuse, of his financial abuse, of his physical abuse, of his psychological abuse. They had no clue their mom was stalking us. They have no idea of our experience. They only knew, and that was my shame. Like, he was bringing me up to get pity because he loved to be pitied. But then he met me, the supposed source for why he needed pity. And he just trashed me for 3 days. He went back to his old ways. And I felt so fooled. And it really triggered this kind of 2-year depression I've been on. I felt foolish. I felt stupid. I felt sad. Even in my last letter to my dad, because I wrote him a letter while I was leaving, and I put, "You're a good person. You're just really lost." And it's something that I mentioned in private and in prior episodes, because at that time I was trying to let him down easy, despite the fact that for 3 days he just wiped the floor with me, like was so rude and nasty. And I was still trying to be gentle and I still said he was a good person. And then I realized, no, he wasn't. He was horrible. He was horrible. He was villainous. He was devilish. He was a bigamist, an addict, a con man, a pathological liar. He used his abuse victim as a way to get pity from the only kids he took care of. And it was because he feared that his other wife would put him in jail. That's what he would tell me. Like those type of mechanisms. And how do you confront that? How do you confront somebody who lies for self-gain? I had nothing to give my dad, nothing but my heart, but my love. And it wasn't anything he wanted. And that realization that I had worked my entire life reshaped my personality, my goals, my relationships according to somebody who never loved me and never wanted to be loved by me, despite all the ways they abused me to make me kind of submit into some form of false loving, was crazy to me. And I think ultimately, I understood what Yali and Josie were talking about, but I think when it comes to ghosting, you have to decide one thing that I see in perspective is that you really do have to decide whether you will feel more comfort telling the person that abused you or was cruel to you the truth, even though you know they won't believe it, even though you know they will fight it, they might even get angrier, or just leaving them, con el Jesús en la boca and just walking away and trying to find other ways, like your art, journaling, to express the truth that you know. Because sometimes I regret not telling my dad he was evil, not telling my dad how aware I was of his evils, and that he was right, I was a liar, because I lied to him when I said he was good. I lied to him when I said how he sabotaged my entire existence and future, like telling me he was going to recommend me to Rutgers, and the day I call him to do so, he told me to earn it. And I've said that in prior episodes, and there's so much more, but those are always the top ones because, I'm almost stunted by how abusive my father was towards me and my mom. And it's like waking up from this dream, or it's like waking up from a nightmare that you were told was a dream. And sometimes I feel so dazed by all the evil and harm. I cried so much with my dad, not only because of him, and he smiled. He loved it. And that in my head, I'm just like, how did I write to this guy? You're a good person, but you've got a lot of pain. No, you're a horrible person and you cause a lot of pain. And the flip of that, it's like I grab onto memories and I've got 5 solid bad things that he's done in depth, but then I start opening more doors and I'm like, I'm almost shocked. I can't believe I lived so long under the thumb of somebody that crushed me. And that's why people ghost. It's like you wake up and you just leave. And what you find is that even though you left them, they've marked you. You've got to heal. You can't go finding their replacements, as I often did via exes. But I couldn't, he wanted to debate me on whether or not he was a good person. And there was no debate, but there was also no convincing him. I knew he was evil. He knew in a way he was evil. What he wanted me to confirm was that he didn't like it, but he loved it. He loved it. And if you're with somebody who loves your pain, ghost them. That's my advice. Leave them. If you have to tell them off, tell them off. Do the Yali, do the Josie. But if you're tired like I was and you just knew it was useless, make a podcast. Check out daddyrecovery.com and check out Business Class out May 24th.